odd mixture of skepticism and interest grasped my mind as I listened to supernatural stories. I want so badly to experience the supernatural, to bathe in the darkness and mystery, to feel that rush of adrenaline. However, as an atheist who argues that there is a rational explanation for everything, the supernatural seems to escape me. But my girlfriend seems to be closer to the supernatural. She has several stories and claims to have a demon that follows her. This demon used to attack her when she had sleep paralysis, scratching at her face and trying to enter into her mouth. Luckily, my girlfriend stopped experiencing sleep paralysis after a traumatic event. She hardly recalls the event, but she swears she does not want to know what happened to her. All she tells me is this: when she was beginning to doubt the existence of God, a demon attached itself to her. It looked like a small black animal that could hardly be seen because it only showed itself in the dead of night. Well, one day, when she began hanging out with her mother's church friends more often, all hell broke loose. She looked into the mirror and saw nothing. Her heart sank. Immediately thereafter, she remembers falling to the floor and convulsing. All she knows after that is that her stepfather and some church friends yelled at the demon inside her until she stopped convulsing. Of course, from my perspective, it sounded like a load of crap. My girlfriend does not think so because the demon left her alone after it. Or so she thought. Years later, while we were dating, she has a couple experiences of sleep paralysis and felt the demon nestling itself into her leg. Unable to move or even yell in the stiffness of the night, she laid there and watched in terror as the demon made a comfy pillow out of her body. Afterwards, her leg always hurt so badly. I thought it was all in her head, so after hearing her nightmarish experience and her fears that the demon was back, I wanted to soothe her. I called upon her demons to come to me instead. I invited them to attack me, to have me. I gave myself up to monsters to have her free from their grip. I thought that if I called upon the demons, then she would not imagine demons around her anymore and she would be fine. Indeed, that was true. Ever since I called upon her demons, they never messed with her again. But I'll never forget the night when I pleaded with demons to attack me. It was a dark and cold night, freezing to me because I was used to the heat of Las Vegas, but had recently moved up north to Reno. None of my roommates were home. It was strange because I lived with 3 other people and usually they were all there that late at night. I was just happy that I could finally have peace and quiet as I tried to sleep. I knocked out on the bed so quickly, unlike most nights when I toss and turn for 30 minutes. Instead, I felt a hot sensation around my entire body. Sweat was dripping out from every single one of my pores. It was as if my room was an oven. I could not breathe how hot it was, since usually I woke up shaking from the cold. But this night was like no other. A twinge of fear shot through my body. I knew I was being watched, but not just watched. I felt like the prey in the view of the hidden predator, ready to strike at any moment. My blanket stung my body with heat, yet I was too stunned to remove it. Also, I didn't want to let go of my blanket because of the utterly stupid idea that blanket equals protection. After about 5 minutes, my eyes finally adjusted to the darkness, and then I saw them. Dark blobs floating all around me, watching me intently. A rush of heat fell upon me, as if they were attacking me with the fires of hell. For some reason, I knew so much. I knew they wanted to destroy me, that they were just about to strike, and I was still all alone in the middle of the night. I jumped out of the bed and yelled, "Get the fuck away from me," as I ran toward the light switch, unsure of whether I was about to die or whether the dark blobs of evil had left. I was in such a state of turmoil that I don't recall what happened in the brief seconds after I yelled, but after I flicked on the lights, the blobs were gone, and all that hung in the air was an ominous feeling. I was still being watched. They hadn't left. They were just hidden. I knew it. I couldn't explain it, but I knew they were still around. I would repeatedly utter, "Leave me alone," as I tripped in the darkness of the apartment, trying to turn on the rest of the lights. All the while, my heart beat rapidly. Nonetheless, I had to inspect the entire apartment before I could feel at ease. The apartment was empty. Not a soul lurked about. The ominous feeling still crept through the apartment, though, and as I re-entered my room, it grew. I kept telling myself that I just imagined the whole thing and that none of it actually happened. Suddenly, I remembered that I'd called upon my girlfriend's demons to come after me. It was them, the 10 or 15 dark blobs that sought to end me that night. They were demons. After about an hour, I gained the courage to turn off the lights, and the dead silence of the night slowly drifted me to sleep, as the ominous feeling faded into the back of my mind. I woke up in a hellish heat once more that night. This time I was too frightened to open my eyes. I tossed my blankets off and all my clothes off with my eyes tightly shut. With my flesh still burning to the bone, I turned to face the wall and tried to sleep. I was resolute on ignoring the demons this time, and I did. Now, every night when I sleep alone, I wake up in the fire surrounded by the dark blobs. It's as if they're telling me now that I'm going to burn in hell for being an atheist. But I'm too stubborn to seriously think that demons exist or that hell exists. I just try to sleep with my girlfriend as often as possible, but if I end up sleeping alone, I make sure to ignore the darkness because I know that the demons already have me. I gave myself to them. Maybe I allowed myself to be disarmed by the fact that he came at 3 in the afternoon. He knocked very softly for a man of his stature, hulking as he was at 6'4" with wide shoulders and big hairy knuckles. When I asked how I could help him, he reached into his coat pocket, withdrew an envelope, and held it out to me. Who wears a coat in August? I took the envelope and looked it over. Its face was stamped over several times with information for the St. Louis Correctional Facility, a letter from prison. Great, I didn't know anyone in prison. Then I noticed a post-it note paper clipped to the back of the envelope. It read simply, "Please allow the courier to be present to witness the reading of this letter." I looked up at the man towering over me on the porch. Though he was large, he didn't appear threatening. If anything, his calm smile made me think he might be rather friendly. I asked if he had any clue about the contents of the letter or why his presence was necessary for the reading, but the tall man shrugged and gestured toward the foyer. I nodded and invited him in. In the kitchen, we both sat across from one another at the table. I offered him some coffee, but he silently declined. Glancing up at him one last time, I peeled the flap back and pulled out a 10-page letter, scrawled in hasty handwriting on lined yellow paper. The letter began, "You don't know me. You'll likely never meet me. I'm on death row at the St. Louis Correctional Facility. I was locked up for the murder of my wife and 2 children. Lionel was 3. Macy was just 6 months old. I loved them dearly, but I did kill them. I'll admit that first and foremost. I hate myself for it, and I rot in my cell, tortured by the images of their blood dripping off my knuckles. Let me tell you my story." I looked back up at the tall man with disgust obvious on my face. His calm, soft grin didn't waver as he stared back at me. I got up to get a glass of water, then returned to the letter. The author of the letter, whose name I found out was Fitz Willard, had been incarcerated 2 weeks ago and begun work on this letter as soon as he had access to stationery. He never explained how he got my address or why he chose me to share his story with, but the story was brutal. Fitz Willard claimed to have been cursed. His first thought was that he suffered from schizophrenia, but he explained that he had been tested for it with no results. He insisted that a demonic spirit was attached to him. The evil spirit taunted him, tortured his every waking moment. It whispered evil deeds in his ear as he lay in bed at night. It appears in his reflection as he walks past the mirror. The demon was constantly suggesting cruelties and filling Fitz's brain with insecurities and phobias and sinister ideas. Fitz's day-to-day life had become riddled by a running commentary on the weakness of humans, the frailty of flesh, and the freedom of bloodletting. Work meetings became haunted by the demon's screeching. The spirit hissed terrible things about every face Fitz passed on the street. The worst still, though, was the demon's thoughts on Fitz's family. He called Fitz's wife a whore, called the children ungrateful bastards. The demon told Fitz that his family didn't appreciate him, that his wife was cheating on him, that his children couldn't stand to be around him, that Fitz could never provide enough for them, that their house was a sty, that their clothes were rags, that everything Fitz had worked towards his whole life was a mediocre joke at best. For 10 pages, Fitz Willard recounted the madness that crept into his psyche, the nightmares that woke him dozens of times at night. The demon made light bulbs flicker as Fitz walked under them. He made the bathtub run red like blood. Flies gathered on the mirror, and the demon's suggestions became more and more furious. They became demands, threats even, until one day Fitz caved in the skulls of his 2 infant children with his bare fist before strangling his wife of 8 years so hard that he fractured the vertebrae in her neck before she finally asphyxiated. That's how he ended the first letter. The tall man stood and nodded to me in silence, then I led him to the front door. Needless to say, I was shaken. Why would someone decide to share such a terrible story with me? Day 2, the tall man stood on my porch again at 3 in the afternoon, and when I answered, he handed me the second letter. As off-put as I was by the first letter, I found that as I sat watching television that night, I couldn't shake the story from my head. I took the second letter and let its deliverer to the kitchen table once again. I wanted more. What word does justice to the nature of the second letter? Dark, twisted, desperate? The yellow paper was rife with drawings of forlorn figures huddled in corners and tiny bodies splayed out in pools of pencil gray. Smudges of graphite made up all the little doodles appear in shadows. The second page of the letter was just one big drawing, a woman's face twisted up in suffering, her mouth hanging open and her throat packed full of maggots, spiders wrapped up in her hair, tears wiped down from her eyes. Her hands grasped her own face, jagged nails dug into her cheeks. That second letter gave the name to the demon, Grimdeed the tormentor. I glanced up often from the letter to the man sitting across the table from me. Did he know the terrible tale I was being told? Is that why it was so important that he was present when I read it? His gentle smile never faltered, never faded as he looked idly around my kitchen. Fitz elaborated on his descent into madness, about the tearful call he made to 911 as he stood over the lifeless bodies of his family. He talked about the trial and how, even in the courtroom, Grimdeed sat behind him at the defendant's table and spoke curses about everyone present. Grimdeed demanded that Fitz try for the bailiff's gun at the conclusion of the trial, and Fitz did. This led to a brief beating. Grimdeed said that Fitz should stand at the door of his cell, screaming profanity and threatening the guards. This leads to longer beatings. Grimdeed told Fitz to spit at the judge the next day at trial, and, as defeated as poor Fitz's conscience was by the demon's constant influence, he did. The letter ended with another drawing, this time the whole courtroom strewn with slaughtered lawyers and the judge hung above his stand. All of it was in the smeared gray of pencil lead with grimy fingerprints pressed into the yellow paper. On the third day, I was sitting on the bottom stair just inside the door, waiting for 3 o'clock, right on time. The courier arrived, and without a word between us, I let him walk through the door. He set the third letter on the kitchen table and sat down. His smile was brighter today, wider than usual. I could tell by his demeanor that this must be the final letter. I peeled the envelope open and sat with steaming coffee at my elbow. In his third letter, Fitz talked about his days in prison, how even in his incarceration, Grimdeed the tormentor haunted him. He described how slow the death penalty process took, how he may die of old age in his prison cell long before the execution date was set. His penmanship became a barely legible scribble. His writing was frantic. He was a rat trapped in a cage being prodded constantly by the cruel muses of Grimdeed the tormentor. Fitz's sanity had long passed. He doodled to himself, smearing something on the walls of his cell with his hands. I assumed feces. Fitz said he was thinking about ripping his ears off in hopes that he would deafen himself and escape Grimdeed's whispers. The yellow pages had stains on it from Fitz's tears. He apologized for that. Then, on the last page, a spark of hope, as if he had stopped and gathered himself. His handwriting once again became clear and clean. The last line read, "Grimdeed has grown bored with me, being locked up like this. I can't do much evil worthy of him. He told me how to end my curse. Well, no, the curse never ends exactly. This is why I'm writing to you, to pass the curse along to its next victim. But since I still have a sliver of humanity left in me, I'll at least let you know how it's done. You make someone else pick up Grimdeed's curse the same way I did, by inviting him into your home 3 times. My heart froze. I didn't dare to breathe as I looked up from Fitz's taunting signature at the end of the letter to find the tall man staring into my eyes. His eyes were an endless black. That cruel grin was wider than ever. "Light the letter on fire," Grimdeed demanded. Hey guys, it's Dawn. Want more? Hit that red subscribe button and follow the links in the description to follow us on Twitter and Google+. Also, if you have any scary stories, creepy artwork, or disturbing pictures you'd like to see featured in one of our videos, send them to the email address below. We'd love to hear from you guys. Thanks for watching, and until next time.